Welcome back to Jet Nation Flight 29. My name is Rami Lavi. Bilal Powell is not here with us today. He will be here in general. We're going to talk to him later this week. I did text back and forth with him. He's just traveling today. And so I wanted to get into a little recap of the Jets' loss before we talk to Bilal later in the week, where we'll preview the London game next week. We'll obviously talk about what happened in the loss. If you heard the first episode, I appreciate it. I appreciate all the positive feedback we've gotten from everyone. Look, it's not exactly a positive season. It hasn't been fun to be a Jets fan this year, but we're doing our best. We're trying to have fun with it. We're going to continue to have a good time with the show. Flight 29, we're excited to be with Jet Nation. So we'll get into all of that as the show goes on. One of the things I actually did talk about, we argued back and forth a little bit, was about Justin Fields. But I want to start here before we get into that. I want to talk about the game itself, because the game itself was as frustrating a game as you can have, because all we heard all week, we had a good week of practice. We're building on what we did at the end of the game in Miami. Every week, it's been the same thing, where at the end of the game, all of a sudden, they have a couple of positive plays, and it's like, oh, we're building momentum. We're going into next week with positive momentum, and it continues to get worse. I don't understand how this team continues to get worse, and this, to me, just when you think there isn't a new rock bottom, you find a new low. You find a new rock bottom. How does it continue to get worse for the Jets and this team? I mean, it's the same story over and over again. It's Breece Hall running with a chance to get in the end zone, and he fumbles the ball. And all of a sudden, the defense, they fold. And this defense has been terrible this year. And they're down 30-3 in this game. And it's the same penalties, the same mistakes, the sloppiness, the end of halves, which continuously Aaron Glenn hasn't figured out yet. And I know it's a first-time coach, but it got me thinking, like, what is happening here? Like, this is worse. I'm a Jets fan, and you're having people now talk about 0-17. This is the worst start for any head coach in Jets history. He's 0-5 so far. This is a team that's 0-5 and hasn't turned the ball over yet, hasn't forced a turnover yet. That's the first team in NFL history to do that. They lost to a Cowboy team and made their defense look incredible for most of this game. Again, they were down 30-3. Yes, there were a couple of late garbage time scores again by Justin Fields, which is what I argued back and forth with Bilal about. We'll get into it a little bit later. But this is a team that went against a Cowboy team. Russell Wilson, who's 90 years old, got benched the following week, put up 500 yards on this Cowboys defense, and the Jets couldn't move the ball on them. This is a Cowboys offense that had one starting offensive lineman, one starting wide receiver, their number 2 receiver, and their offense dominated the Jets. The Jets couldn't get a single sack. They got one sack where Dak gave himself up. That was it. Like, how does this keep happening? I saw one play because all the film breakdown comes in, and you have Michael Clemens, and I've seen way too much. I've seen enough of Michael Clemens. In fact, I saw a picture of somebody in the stadium wearing a Michael Clemens jersey, and I said, ban him. You shouldn't have let him in the building. That might have been a Cowboy fan trolling, honestly. Like that's how bad it is. You're wearing a Michael Clemens jersey. What are you doing? But I saw the play where Michael Clemens, there's a rush to the outside, to Michael Clemens' side. He's the edge. He's supposed to be, his job is to contain the edge. And the run goes to his side. And instead of running to the guy, he runs at the offensive lineman. Like, at that point, like, you're selling. You're doing that on purpose. Like, how? You see the guy with the ball right in front of you, and you run the wrong direction. It's unbelievable. It's so frustrating, and it continues to get worse. It's gotten worse every single week, where it gets sloppier. And then you talk about, well, you see Aaron Glenn punching the ball out during practices. That's not working. Greg Olsen was on it with some of the defensive stuff going into the half. He's like, you have one job. On the run by Javonte Williams, even if you're going to give up a big run, which was crazy. You should have stopped him. There's so many missed tackles. How many times does this team miss tackles over and over again? This team continues to miss tackles. I think it was 14 or 15 in the game. But even if you're going to miss all those tackles, the last thing you could let him do is get to the sideline. Just keep him in bounds. And they have to, if they run up and spike it in time, they settle for a field goal, and that you go to the half. But instead, they let him get to the sideline to stop the clock. And not only that, you knew they had to throw the ball there just based on time. They had to throw the ball in that situation. Greg Olsen said, he said, there's just a lack of preparation. There's a lack of awareness on this entire defense. And again, they give up the passing touchdown before the half, and that's the game. And it goes back to the bad clock management by Aaron Glenn, where he's allowing them to be in these situations because he trusts his offense. He's trying to get the ball back. And I get what he's doing, because he's trying to have some positive momentum going into the half, but it hasn't worked. Every single week, the last couple of minutes going into the half, he's used his timeouts, which have only helped the opponent get more points. Because at that point, it's a 10-3 game. Like, it's close. And then all of a sudden you blink and you go into the half and you're down 24-3. And before you get the ball back, you're down 30-3. It was just like unbelievable just how this team falls apart so quickly every single week. And it's so frustrating. It's the same penalties. It's the same lack of preparation. And it's the things that Aaron Glenn, and I talked about this with Bilal. The clip went out on social media. I talked about this with Bilal on Friday. It's the things that Aaron Glenn was preaching that they are worse at, which makes no sense. And so after the game, Aaron Glenn had this to say.
It's going to take time, fellas. I mean, just because, we're struggling this year. I talked to two guys this week. Again, I told you guys, Tony Dungy, Jimmy Johnson, they all had these issues early on. And listen, I'm not throwing any one of these guys out. The only thing that we can do is go back to work.
Go back to work. It's going to take time. How have they taken a massive step back from last year? They were bad last year, and they took a step back. This is worse than Jeff Ulbrich. This is worse than Robert Saleh. So you're telling me it's going to take time to fix, but you've only made it worse every single week. So I was seeing some positive progression, if I was seeing signs moving towards them getting better at some of these things, then you could tell me, okay, it's going to take time. I understand. This is worse than ever. So don't tell me it's going to take time. You need to start from scratch still. You haven't started yet. And that's the problem with this head coach. That's the problem that I have with him. And it got me to thinking, because when you talk about 0-17 and you talk about maybe one of the worst Jets teams in Jets history, the Jets have had a long history of terrible teams. And now they're the last team to not have a win yet after the incredible, just insane Tennessee win yesterday. And you look at, by the way, you look at some of these other teams, like Miami would be winless. Their only win came against the Jets, right? Which is crazy. So you look at some of the teams around the league and some of the past Jets teams, and you think, I honestly think to myself, this is not an 0-17 team when you look at the talent of this team. We were sold a bill of goods. We were promised that no matter what, we would play up, right? Up meaning from where the talent level was, because they would play hard, they would tackle well, they would be strong fundamentally, they wouldn't make mistakes, there wouldn't be penalties. They were the most penalized team the last 2 years in the league. I'm not saying that this is exclusive to Aaron Glenn, but his whole thing coming in with referees from day one of practice was we were going to fix those things. You might not be, thrilled with the talent on the field, but you're going to be thrilled with the effort we put out, with the product that we have that you can be proud of. That's all Aaron Glenn talked about before the season. And if anything, it's been the opposite. When I watch this team, I see the Jets moving the ball on offense. I know the turnovers are killing them, and a lot of the points they have are empty points at the end of games, but still they have something on offense. Like Justin Fields, for all his flaws, which we'll get into a little bit later, he's not the worst quarterback in the league, like when it comes to just being able to put up points. Garrett Wilson is having a really good year. Mason Taylor looks like a real player. Breece Hall's having a solid season. We're seeing a lot from Isaiah Davis. This is the worst game the offensive line had, and I think a lot of that was on Justin Fields. Again, something I talked about back and forth with Bilal, and we'll probably talk about later this week. But I just don't understand, because when I watch this team, I see Quinnen Williams still kind of making plays from time to time. I saw Sauce making plays. I see Brandon Stevens actually getting better. Andre Sisco, jury's still out on him, but I see guys on this team making plays. I see Nick Folk, who could hit long field goals accurately. And yet the mistakes are what's killing them. So it's not for lack of talent. So you can't tell me that this team going 0-17 is on anyone but clearly the coach. They're not ready to play when they come out to start the game. They make mental errors over and over again. They're not aware in key situations where they need to be aware of their surroundings. The same penalties, the same mistakes, the same missed tackles, the same pre-snap penalties on offense. It's just mind-boggling, the same turnovers. And if you're preaching these things every week, and clearly he is, everyone said he ripped into the team on Monday night and it only got worse. Do you not have their ear? I don't understand how this happens with Aaron Glenn. And what I thought about was last year in Detroit, where it all fell apart, the last month of the season. Aaron Glenn's defense fell apart. And not only did they fall apart, what they were worse at, specifically in that game, when everyone watched them on a national stage, the playoff game at home against Washington, they couldn't get stops on third down. They couldn't get off the field when their defense needed to make a play. They couldn't make the big play when the big play was needed. They continuously seemed to be unaware. They were bad in situations. They made roughing penalties. They had bad situational awareness. They had so many plays in that game that looked like this year's Jets team. And it got me to thinking, the Lions had such a disappointing exit last year, right? Was there a chance in Detroit that they would have fired Aaron Glenn after last season? Because somebody could have taken the fall for that. Now, he ended up going anyway, right? And they just said, well, there were a ton of injuries on defense, so the injuries, and it looked terrible. But the last month of the season where their season fell apart was because Aaron Glenn's defense lacked situational awareness, had too many penalties, had too many missed tackles, and couldn't get off the field on 3rd and 4th downs. Does that sound familiar to you? That sounds exactly like this Jets team. And the reason I bring that up is, are we sure this guy's a great coach? And I say all that to say, I don't think he should be one and done. But at some point, if you go 0-17 and it continues to look worse and worse every week, how can you justify keeping him? Is it just because he's a former Jet and we like him and he sounds good in the media and he seems to know what he's doing? But when you watch him on Sunday, it's so bad. And it's so clearly a poorly coached team. And so I don't know where they go with this. I don't think Woody Johnson's ever going to do it. I don't think he's ever going to fire him. And I was an advocate in the offseason. If you listen to us on the other platform, if you listen to us on me on WFAN, if you follow me on social media at Rami_Lavi, that's Twitter and TikTok, at Rami.Lavi on Instagram, you've heard me talk about that. I didn't think he was the right hire going into. Now I bought in. I was all in on him, especially even earlier in the year when they cut Xavier Gibson after 1 week. I was all in on Aaron Glenn because he sounded good. He was saying all the right things, saying everything I wanted to hear as a Jet fan, preaching the right things, and then it's just not working out on the field. In fact, it's worse than ever. But I didn't think he was the right hire because I think you need a veteran to come in here, somebody who has past experience, who could just stand up and be the man in the room. And unfortunately, you don't have that. And Aaron Glenn and Darren Muji work hand in hand because Muji was hired after Glenn, remember? So he's the Glenn guy almost. It's like Glenn is the leader and Muji's second in command, which is not the way you should do it, but it's the way they decided to do it, which means all the bad signings that we're putting on Muji, whether it's a Cisco, whether it's a Brandon Stevens, any of these guys, whether it's still having Michael Clemens as your edge rusher, that's got to fall at some point on Aaron Glenn too, because he's clearly 1A to 1B in this head coach GM alignment. And if you had a veteran guy, a veteran head coach come in here, a Jim Harbaugh when he was available, if you went and got John Gruden, like, I would trust that this organization is turning it around. But it was something interesting that Aaron, I talked about Greg Olson on the broadcast and how excellent he was. He was on every single topic. He was nailing it, just pointing out the Jets' flaws here and there. And he just was right, and he's really one of the best analysts there is. And he said something on, I think it's called Wake Up Barstool, which is the Fox Sports show that he does in the morning with Barstool Sports. He said something very interesting about the Jets. I saw this clip on social media today from Greg Olson.
The question that I always had, and this isn't a knock on Aaron Glenn, obviously his time in the NFL is pretty impressive, but you had Robert Saleh, who was everything they said that now Aaron Glenn was hired for: culture, attitude, defense, leadership. All those things are true. And then about a year ago, almost to the day, they fire Robert Saleh. At the time, he's got a top 5 defense in the league. The Aaron Rodgers thing hadn't gone according to plan. Offensively was their issue. So they fire their defensive coach to hire a defensive coach to only get worse on defense and still not be good on offense. I just don't understand what these organizations are doing. That's probably, if I was a Jets fan, that'd be my biggest frustration. But I think it's just bigger than the coach, bigger than the quarterback in New York.
And it all goes back to Woody Johnson, the owner of the team, because you fired a defensive guy when you had a top 5 defense to hire another first-time defensive coordinator to come in here. Now, it's different, right? Because he's got this edge. Well, that's what we said about Robert Saleh. Look at him running around on the sideline. He's going to bring an edge to this team. And that actually worked. It actually translated to the defense on the field. Like, at least with Saleh, you could say it translated. And I'm not here to defend the Saleh era. I don't think he's a good head coach. But he's better than Aaron Glenn. And that's the crazy part. Like, Aaron Glenn's team looks like the worst coach team in football since like Jeff Saturday when he came out of the ESPN booth and went straight on the sideline with the Colts. Like, that's how bad of a defense, that's how bad of a coach team this is for the Jets. And I don't understand it. And so you're going to tell me, well, it's a Jets legend, and so he's not going, like, Woody Johnson's not going to fire him. And the biggest problem is Woody Johnson's never going to hire a veteran head coach. He's never going to hire someone with the experience. You know why? Because they're going to tell Woody Johnson, all right, see ya. You're not part of the decision-making anymore. You can't come in here and tell me we have to get rid of Aaron Rodgers like what he did to Aaron Glenn this year. They won't let him do that. John Gruden wouldn't let that happen to him. I'm sorry, John Harbaugh, if he becomes available with how the Ravens season is going, I could see him becoming available. And I would love the Jets to hire John Harbaugh. Can't you see it? You could see it right now. The Jets don't hire John Harbaugh, or they don't fire Aaron Glenn because, oh, it's just 1 year. Yeah, we were 2-15, but it's 1 year. We saw progress. We beat the Saints at the end of the year. We beat the Browns at the end of the year. Look at the back half of the schedule and some of those terrible teams they're playing. They're all of a sudden, and I talked about this before the season, they're going to parlay that into, we have positive momentum going into next year. John Harbaugh will get fired in Baltimore, get hired in Miami or something, so he's in the division. And then the Jets will inevitably go 2-15 again and then fire Aaron Glenn after next year. Like, it's ridiculous. We go through the same things over and over and over again. And at some point, you got to look at the owner and say, that's on you. Because like Greg Olson just said, it goes beyond the head coach and the players when you're seeing the same things for a franchise for decades already. And look, I'm not advocating for the firing of Aaron Glenn, but don't tell me it's impossible. Well, there's precedent for it. We just saw a good owner who runs a good organization in New England do this, right? Robert Kraft hired Gerard Mayo, a former player, a former Patriot, a guy everyone likes over there. He hired him. They were terrible. He said, nope, that was a mistake. Vrabel's coming available. I got it now. Granted, it's another former player of this, but it's a veteran head coach. I got to get him, so I'm going to fire Gerard Mayo. It's okay to own your mistake. The worst thing you could do when you make a mistake as a professional sports franchise is compound on the mistake. They did this a couple of years ago. They had an opportunity to hire a veteran. They could have hired Mike Vrabel last year when the Patriots weren't hiring him. But instead, they decided to keep Robert Saleh for another year and then fired him 4 games in. That's the owner. That's not an Aaron Glenn thing. I'm not even mad at Aaron Glenn. Like, if he's not a good coach, he's not a good coach. Like, that sucks. I'm rooting for him. I hope he is, but it seems like he's not. It's a Woody Johnson thing. And until he hires a veteran or until he sells the team, I don't think this is going to ever change. And he's happy as can be. He's flying to London this week. His favorite thing, just leave the team in London. He wants to be in London so bad, just stay in London because it's so frustrating. And I just can't see how this franchise ever changes unless Woody Johnson's gone, which is so frustrating. So a couple of Justin Fields stats, and then we'll wrap it up. Justin Fields is now 0-26 as a starter when his opponents score 21 points or more. Is that all on Justin Fields? Not really, because a lot of people are pointing at his stats and saying, well, he's actually playing pretty well. And if you look at the numbers overall, Justin Fields is 29 of 44 with 248 yards and 3 touchdowns and 0 picks in the fourth quarter of games this season. So he's having monster numbers in the fourth quarter. That's 32% of his yards, 75% of his total TDs, all but one. Yesterday, again in the fourth quarter, 16-22, 132 yards, 2 touchdowns. 9-13 against the Dolphins, 116 yards, a touchdown. 4-7, 45 yards against Pittsburgh. But the times in these games, they were down 24-10 going into the fourth quarter. They were down 30-6 going into the fourth quarter yesterday. A lot of his numbers that he's putting up that everyone's talking about look really good are garbage time stats. And what I'm still seeing from him is a hesitation. And Bilal was texting me. He's like, they need to run a quick game with him. That's what they need to do. You see guys open. When you watch the film, you see guys open. And yeah, he's not running a quick game because he's hesitant to throw it. These are his mistakes. He doesn't trust what he's seeing. He's still processing slowly. So while I see the talent and I see what they want to build with him and they want to run more RPOs and all that stuff, yeah, but if you're running an RPO, you're trusting that guy to make the decisions. It doesn't help that he misses a wide open Garrett Wilson on a throw down the right sideline. But let's get away from looking at the numbers of people like, oh, well, he's not the problem in New York. He's a franchise quarterback. No, he's not. You're not watching the games if you think that. Justin Fields leads the NFL with an average time to throw of 3.27 seconds. That's really long. 7 of his 10 sacks, because we talked about the offensive line earlier in this game finally looking poor. Well, 7 of his 10 sacks have come when he's held on to the ball for longer than 2.5 seconds, as of all 5 of his turnover plays that he's had this year. So that means that he's holding on to the ball too long. Fields' PFF passing grade drops from an 81, which is pretty good, to a 60 when he holds on to the ball for longer than 2.5 seconds. Again, holding the ball too long. And he's only held on to the ball shorter than 2.5 seconds on 27% of his dropbacks. The next lowest is Caleb Williams, which is at 35%. So he's by far the lowest in the league. And this guy ends the tweet by saying the Jets need to emphasize getting rid of the ball quickly, which is something Bilal said to me. I don't think they're not emphasizing that. I think they're trying to coach that to him. They're trying to say, get rid of the ball quickly. That's the problem here, clearly, because all these bad things are happening when you're holding on to the ball this too long. And he's only getting rid of the ball quickly at a 27% rate. That's crazy. A lot of that time, it's him bailing and trying to run by time in the pocket, but that's a ton. Caleb Williams runs around. He's a second-year quarterback who's finally learning under Ben Johnson. We'll see how he comes out of the bye week after a couple of good games back-to-back. But this is insane. Like, it's just not good. And the numbers are deceiving because you see the plays that he's capable of making, the running plays, the athleticism, some of the throws he makes, and all the numbers that he's put up in these fourth quarters are deceiving because it's just not what he's done. And I'm fine watching it the rest of the year, but we can't go into next season with Aaron Glenn and Justin Fields. And the fear is that that's what they're going to do. They might have the first or second overall pick in the draft. They need to draft a quarterback. And I don't think Glenn's the right guy to be the head coach. He hasn't shown me anything. You could tell me all you want. It's going to take time. Show me some sense of progress. And they haven't shown any. Then if anything, they've gone backwards. And the same with Justin Fields. I understand that it's not all on him. He's not the number one problem. The defense is the number one problem by far. But the stats don't lie. Him holding on to the ball for over 2.5 seconds, almost 80% of the time, 73% of the time, that's crazy. Him putting up most of his numbers when the games are out of reach in the fourth quarter, it tells you who he is. It tells you what's happening here. And you can see it or not. And I wish I was doing a happier podcast. The show with Bilal will be a little bit better. Maybe we'll talk about what some of his former quarterbacks, his former teammates did over the weekend, because there were a lot of stories about those three guys, or three of the guys. We probably won't get into that. If you know, you know. But until next time, I do appreciate everyone for listening. Like, subscribe, share the show, share the podcast. Make sure if you want to contact us, we're going to have a lot of stuff in the forum on Jet Nation. We want to hear from you guys. We want to interact. We want to talk ball. So we might have mailbag questions, all that kind of stuff. So stay tuned for all that. Follow us on all socials. Follow the show on Twitter, on X, on Instagram. Go to YouTube, subscribe to the page, share it with a friend so that you never miss an episode. You never miss any announcement that's going to be coming, because we're going to be doing a lot of fun stuff with the show. Even though the Jets as a team were not fun. And I've said this before. I don't know. I don't know if I can ever trust and fully invest emotionally in this team until Woody Johnson sells the team. And then, every Sunday I find myself sitting there emotionally invested, sitting watching the game. So hopefully it'll be better. I don't have a ton of hope, but they're going to London on Sunday. Who knows how that's going to go? I think we do know how that's going to go, actually. So until then, especially Denver coming off a huge win against Philadelphia. Is that a letdown spot for them? Probably not. So it's going to be tough. I have a friend going who's a big Bronco fan. Shout out AG. So not Aaron Glenn, Anthony Gallo. But until next time, like I said, like, subscribe. Appreciate you guys for listening. Share the podcast. Until next time, see ya.